Do you know why so many salespeople suck at cold calling and say it's dead? Because they're using what we call the numbers game strategy. Come over here, I'm going to show you exactly why and exactly how to get much better at cold calling than you are right now. Here's the numbers game strategy, right? You always hear that in cold calling. You just got to call the numbers, just get more no's and you'll eventually get a yes. Imagine Steph Curry in the NBA saying, basketball is just a numbers game. Shoot as many threes as you can. Eventually you're going to hit 1 out of 30. Well, if Steph had that mindset, he would have never made it on his varsity basketball team, let alone be an NBA Hall of Famer. Steph knows it's a skills game. So I'm going to show you skills, but I'm going to first show you why you're having problems, all right? Now, most salespeople use some type of cold calling approach that sounds like this or some type of offshoot of this. It's one or two things. Hi, is this John? Hey, John, it's Jeremy Miller with XYZ Company. Listen, the reason why I'm calling you is, and then you go over why you're calling. Now, what do 99% of prospects do at that point? Yeah, I really appreciate it, but we're not interested. We already have somebody for that. No, we're good. I appreciate it. Click. Okay. You're triggering fight or flight mode, and I'm going to show you why that happens. Now, the second way some people have been told how to cold call is something like this, some form like this. This works a little bit better than this old school approach. It's been around since like the 1950s, okay? But this works a little bit better, but still going to play the number game. Hi, is John there? John, hey, it's James Miller. Now, hey, full disclosure, this is a sales call. It's a cold call. If I could just go over a few things that we're doing, within 1 or 2 minutes, and then you can tell me if you're interested. If you're not, I'll just hang up. Fair enough? Now, that works a little bit better. But a lot of prospects, most of them, will still say, hey, not interested. We already have somebody for that, right after you get to that next point. Or they might say, yeah, fair enough. And then after about 30 more seconds, like, oh, not interested. We're already good. We already have somebody for that. So this doesn't work that well either, okay? Now, why do those two techniques not work? Because you are triggering, especially with your tonality. Look, I know it's not your fault. Okay, you were trained how to cold call that way. Not your fault, but it is your what? It is your problem, okay? And that's what I'm going to help you fix here. So what you're triggering is called fight or flight mode. So anytime the prospect says quickly, not interested, we're good, we already have somebody for that, that is a knee-jerk reaction based on defensive mechanisms in the brain. So as a society, because we're already always marketed to and sold to all the time, we have built up defensive mechanisms in our survival part of the brain. Most people call that your reptilian part of your brain, or other names out there, okay? So anytime you sound like a salesperson, so if your tone is monotone, like a telemarketer reading from a script, or you're way too excited, I don't mean be boring, there's a middle ground like an expert, you're right in the middle, you're triggering those defensive mechanisms where you literally sound like every salesperson that's ever cold called them ever knocked on their door, ever called them on the phone, ever tried to sell them anything. You sound like them. So they instantly try to get rid of you, okay? That's because, like I said, your tone makes you sound like everybody else, and then they throw out objections, okay? Now, there's a lot more I could go into there, but I'm going to save that for another training, all right? Now, here's the skills game approach. I want to trigger curiosity in the prospect's mind, which causes them to want to engage. I wanted to use what we call a pattern interrupt. Now, for every industry, we train this. We train 161 different industries and all the subcategories of all those industries, which would include your industry watching me here. According to Forbes magazine, there's quite literally only 163 industries on the planet, and there's subcategories of each one. We are in all of this. There's only 2 industries we don't train, like salt mining and something else that nobody even knows what it is, okay? So I want to have a pattern interrupt. I want to interrupt their patterns, because if I'm like, hi, my name is, I'm with XYZ Company, the reason why I called is, that's the pattern they're already used to. They're already used to that script. They know what that is. Instantly, they're triggered. When I pattern interrupt, I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different industry-specific examples and the formula to do it for your industry. I throw them off. Their brain doesn't know what's going on, so it automatically causes them to be curious. It causes curiosity. It triggers curiosity in their mind. That's what you probably want. And I also want to use, right when I cold call, what we call a familiar tone, where they feel like they already know you, okay? If you ever get a call from somebody like, hey, John, it's Amy Smith, how are you doing? And you're like, I'm doing good, how are you? And you just go with it for the first 30, 45 seconds trying to figure out, like, Who's Amy Smith? Who's Amy Smith? Did I go on a date with her? Did I go to a networking event with her? Maybe she's at my church. Like, you don't know, but they sound so familiar because of their tone that it would be too rude for you to say, who is this? You just wouldn't do it because their tone is a familiar tone. So I'm going to show you some examples on how to use a familiar tone with what you sell. And then I'm also going to show you how to use what we call a confused tone. Now, let me specify. I don't mean confused tone like you're 96 years old and you have dementia and you're confused, like you don't know what's going on, or like you're in your presentation, you're like, oh, I don't know how it works. That's not what I mean. A confused tone is like when you walk into somewhere like, I'm not sure I understand, like where should I actually be going over here? And people come to your rescue because you sound confused, like you need a little bit of help. So I'm going to show you in certain contexts at the beginning, really only the beginning of a cold call, how to use a confused tone to trigger more curiosity. I bet you're curious about what the H-E-double-L I mean by this right now. If you are, now, what I want you to do is comment in the comment section right now your biggest struggles with cold calling. So while you're watching this video, go down in the comments and make a comment about your biggest struggles right now when you cold call, because I'm going to read those after to make some more training content around that to help you. Okay? Now, this is a generic example of what we call an NEPQ problem statement. Instead of focusing on the reason why I'm calling you is and going into your solution and all the benefits and features, which goes in one ear out the other prospects, I want to focus on one or two problems that I know anybody that answers that phone, depending on the industry I'm calling or the company, would know about, because it triggers curiosity. Okay? Now, what I'm also going to do is in every industry, and like I said, we train out of the 163 industries on the planet in subcategories, we're in 161 of those. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we already train your industry. And in every industry that cold calls, we have developed what we call pattern interrupts by having them say they're holding a copy of something that that prospect or that company would know about. Okay? Let's say if I'm a real estate agent and I'm calling expired listings. Yeah, I'm holding a copy of the expired listings. It looks like you had your home up for sale about 6 months ago, the 55 Willow Lane home. So I'm holding something. Let's say if I'm a recruiting agency. Yeah, I'm holding a copy of the ad you have about looking at like 6 new truck drivers for the job next month. See, whatever it is, I'm holding a copy of something. It's an example of a pattern interrupt where it's hard for them to say, not interested. I want them to say, oh, who is this again? Or what do you guys do? Or who are you with? I'm triggering curiosity, all right? Now, I also want to use a familiar tone. So when the prospect answers, I'm immediately doing this. Yeah, is John there? Yeah, John, hey, it's Jeremy. Jeremy Miller. I'm holding a copy of your blank and I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Yeah, it's Jeremy Miller. Notice that little verbal pause. I'm going to say the first name here first, little verbal pause, and then you're going to say your entire name. Now, depending on your industry, I'd be careful right here at this part of telling them what company you're with. So let's say if you sold real estate, for example. I'm with XYZ Realty. You're automatically giving away what you're doing. So it depends on, like I'm with XYZ Solar Company. You don't want to do that because they're like, oh, solar, not interested. So you don't want to trigger that. So it depends on your industry. Will depend on if you're going to say your company's name here or if you're going to say it later down in here. Okay, I just want to specify that. Now, let's see what I just did. This is all generic right here. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different industry-specific examples to help you structure your problem statement right after this, okay? So I'm holding a copy of your blank, and I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Now notice this goes into more of a, right here, and here, this goes into a confused tone. Now this right here is a familiar tone. Remember I said, hey, it's Amy Smith, how you doing? See, that's a familiar tone. When I say, yeah, it's Jeremy Miller, see, that sounds like I already know them, like they already know me. If you use that familiar tone, you really got to practice this verbal pace out there. Yeah, it's Jeremy Miller with XYZ Company. I'm holding a copy of your blank, and I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Then I go into that confused tone, okay? Notice I'm shuffling the papers. Why am I doing that? Because they can hear that. And it triggers in their brain, what are they shuffling? Especially when I say, I'm holding a copy of your blank. I'm shuffling the copy of whatever that is. You see what I'm doing there, okay? Let's say if I'm a CPA firm calling wealthy business owners, maybe I print off their revenue report from the year before, okay? It just depends on who you're calling, all right? Now, here at this point, I then have to disarm them, okay? I got to make them feel like I'm not sure I can help you yet. Does that make sense? Okay? Like if you get too assumptive too quick in that conversation, especially if you're calling A-type C-level executives on a cold call, you are going to trigger massive resistance very quickly because they don't know who you're, like a complete stranger. Now that doesn't mean you don't get assumptive further on in the sale when you've built more trust and you've built a bigger gap. But here, 10 seconds in, how much trust or credibility do you have? Like zero, because you're like a stranger cold calling them, okay? Now, right here at this point, I've got to get them to let their guard down. So I've kind of got to say, I'm not quite sure we should even be talking about, I'm not quite sure if I can even help you yet. I've got to get them to let their guard down. I can't be assumptive 10 seconds into a cold call because how much trust and credibility do you have with a complete stranger? Zero at this point. So if you get too assumptive too early, before you've built any trust or credibility, especially with A-type C-level executives, you are going to get crushed on cold calls because they don't know who you are from Adam or Eve, okay? So immediately say, I wonder if you could possibly help me out for a moment? Sure, how can I help you? Or what's this all about? Well, and I'm not even sure if it makes sense for us to talk yet. See how I'm downplaying it, but I'm also like acting like I'm not quite sure I can even do anything yet. That's a disarming technique. Now, do we know we can help them? Yes. Does the prospect know we can help them in 10 seconds? No, because you have zero trust and credibility. So I have to get them to let their guard down. It's a disarming technique. That's it. Okay. As I build more of a gap, build more trust, of course, I'm going to get them by the end of that conversation. If my agenda is to get them to book an appointment for a sales call or whatever, let's say about SDR or something, then I'm going to build that gap. But here at the beginning, they don't know much about it. Well, and I'm not even sure if it makes sense for us to talk. Okay. Or I can say this. Well, and I'm not even sure if you're the right person I should be talking to. I called to see who would be responsible in your department for looking at like any possible hidden gaps in your blank that could be causing the firm to blank. Who should I be talking to about that? Okay. Now, there's two different ways I could do this. Depending on the industry, I might start off here. Well, I'm not even sure if it makes sense for us to talk yet. Now, I'll show you different examples as I show here. Or I would say this. Well, and I'm not even sure if you're the right person I should be talking to. I called to see who would be responsible in your company for looking at any like possible hidden gaps in your blank that could be causing the firm to blank. Like who should I be talking to about that? Now, notice I did a few things here. On this form here, I'm not even sure. This is a disarming technique right here. I'm not sure if you're the right person I should be talking to. And then I said, I'm called to see who would be responsible. It's hard for the person who is responsible to say, no, I'm not responsible. Okay, I call to see who would be responsible in your company. Now, if it's a big company, I might say department. Depends on if I'm selling at the enterprise level or more SMB. If it's enterprise, I'm going to say department. If it's the company, I'm going to say the company. If I know that the right company person's answering, the right department person's answering. If I don't, I'm going to say company. And look at any like possible, no, notice I'm still neutral here. I'm using the word possible. I'm not too assumptive yet. I don't have much credibility 20 seconds in. Possible like hidden gaps in your blank that could be causing you guys to blank. That's the consequence. And then immediately you lean and say, who should I be talking to about that? Like it's a serious thing. Okay? Now that is the generic version. I'm going to show you some industry specific versions so you understand how this works. Okay? Okay, let's say that you sell healthcare SaaS, all right, and AI. Now, as well, if you want to get more industry-specific training for your industry, go ahead and hit the subscribe button because a lot of times I will come in here and do a couple of different training videos a week where I get more industry-specific. Can't talk. Industry-specific. Throw some water on my face. So if you want more of that, hit the subscribe button and maybe one of the other training videos. If you comment below what industry you're in the comments, tell me what industry you're in and what you actually sell. Maybe I'll make some YouTube videos around your industry to make it industry specific. So hit the subscribe button and then comment below if you want that. Now, let's say if I sell healthcare SaaS. Okay, it's a big industry we're training as well. And I have some type of SaaS product. Let's say it has to do with AI. And let's say I'm selling to hospitals or doctors. And on average, the average doctor has to dictate their notes manually about 90 minutes to 2 hours a day. So if they're doing that during work hours, that means they can't see patients during that 2 hours a day. that means the hospital lose two billable hours a day per doctor. That's a lot of money that I could solve if my AI stuff did that automatically. Now, why do they have to dictate notes and make sure they're accurate? Because if they don't, that means they could prescribe something that is not good for the patient, the wrong medication. It could kill the patient and they get sued. It also could mean that they don't dictate the notes the right way and the insurance companies don't reimburse the hospital, so they don't get paid. Okay, it's a big important thing here. Or maybe they're dictating their notes at the end of the day and they miss their little Johnny soccer's games or Linda's, ballet classes or piano classes, and they want to spend more time with their family. Okay, so you're solving that emotional need. So right when they answer, I'm going to take a drink of water here to get that throat going. Always affects your tone. So right when they answer, yeah, is this Linda? Yeah, Linda. Hey, it's Jeremy. Jeremy Miller. I'm holding a copy of your online patient reviews. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Sure. How can I help you? What's this all about? Well, and I'm not even sure who I should be talking to. I called to see who would be the person responsible for helping, your doctors, reduce the time they're having to, being forced to dictate their notes that might be preventing them from seeing more patients and causing the hospital to lose more billable hours. Who should I be talking to about that? Okay, now let me do this over again with you. I want to use a little bit better tone there, and I want to go through the whole thing. And I'm going to shuffle the papers like I'm doing it live in person, all right? Okay, now here we go. Yeah, is this Linda? Yeah, Linda, hey, it's Jeremy. Jeremy Miller with ABC Company. I'm holding a copy of your online patient reviews. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. These are for 2023. Sure. But online patient reviews? Yeah, and I'm not even sure if you're the right person I should be talking to. I called to see who would be the person in your hospital that would be responsible for overseeing how the doctors kind of reduce their time, that maybe they're being forced to dictate their notes manually, that might be maybe preventing them from seeing more patients each day and the hospital losing out on billable hours. Who should I be talking to about that? See, now I'm going into that confused tone, I don't know who I should be talking to or who the right person is. Same thing, I called to see who would be responsible. It's hard, if they're the responsible person, it's hard for them to say, I'm not responsible. Responsible for helping the doctors. Now, notice what I did. I focused on the problem. Reduce the time they're being forced to dictate their notes. What's the problem? Preventing them from seeing more patients. Hospital, to help the hospital get more billable hours. See, I'm focused on that. Now, most people you're calling, if you're calling a hospital or some type of doctor or something, they would know about this stuff. So it resonates. Most of the time, I will tell you, 87% of the time, from our clients from this industry, they're 85% of the time, they're that would be Bob over at, and then they tell you, okay? And then, instead of saying, can I talk to Bob, or is he available, you're going to do it a little bit differently. Should I have you transfer me over to Bob and leave a voice message so they can call me back if they'd like later to see if I'd be available? It's easier for them to transfer you over to leave a message. Now, the thing is, if Bob's there, he's going to pick up the phone anyways. Okay, so do you see how I'm kind of giving them the milk a little bit before the meeting. I'm not saying, can I talk to Bob now? Is he there? Or does he know you're calling? Should I have you transfer me over to Bob's phone and leave a voice message so they can call me back later to see if I'll be available for them? Sure. Okay, see the difference in that, all right? Now, sometimes they respond differently. We don't have time to go through that. I'm just kind of showing you the basics here. Now, let me show you a few other examples. Maybe we'll get that into another training video. Okay, now let's go here. All right, let's say, let me show you a different example here, okay? I'm going to show you one more here. Maybe I'll show you two. Here's a pattern up. Now, let's say that you cold call, okay? And let's say that you're a real estate investor and you're cold calling distressed properties, okay, to go in and buy those homes for maybe 30 or 40% less than what they're worth, fix them all up, then resell them for a huge profit. That's a huge industry we train as well as real estate. You can also use this, a similar version of this, if you're a real estate agent calling expired listings. You would just say you're holding a copy of older listings in your hand about their home at 55 Willow Lane, and I'll show you what to do there. So let's say that you're distressed, you're calling distressed property owners. Yes, is Sally there? Yeah, hey Sally, it's Jeremy. Jeremy Miner. I'm holding a copy of your property taxes on your 55 Willow Lane home there in Savannah. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Now at this point, they don't know if you're the IRS. They don't know if you're a county clerk. They don't know who the heck you are. In pretty much every county in America, you can go actually out and print off the property tax records for any home that you're calling, just so you know. So you're going to hold those in your hand. Yeah, it's Jeremy, Jeremy Miner. I'm holding a copy of your property tax records on your 55 Willow Lane home there in Savannah, and I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. See, now I'm confused. Possibly help me out for. Sure. What's going on? They're always saying, sure, or oh, you have my property tax records. Like, who are you from? And then immediately I got to disarm them. Oh, yeah, Sally, and I'm not. Just so you know, I'm not quite sure if it even makes sense for us to talk yet. See, I've got to disarm them. I've got to get them to let their guard down. Oh, well, and I'm not even sure if it makes sense for us to talk. I represent a group of buyers who are purchasing, I want to say it's like 6 or maybe even 7 different properties in that 5-block area where your Willow Lane home is at. And after they had me look at your property tax records, they had me reach out to see if you'd be, I don't know, maybe opposed to having a brief conversation on the property. Would you be against talking about that? Or would you be opposed about having a conversation around that? Or I could say, let me call you to see if you would be opposed to maybe even getting an offer on that property. Would you be against talking about that? Now, what did I do here? This is a disarming technique. Well, I'm not even sure if it makes sense for us to talk. See, I got to get them to let their guard down. Then notice how I'm looking through the papers. Yeah, I represent a group of buyers. I'm looking to buy, I want to say it's 5 or 6 different properties there in that 5-block area where your Willow Lane home is. And after they had me look at your property tax records, they had me reach out to see if you'd be maybe even opposed to getting an offer on that property. Would you be against talking about something like that? Now, why would I say the word opposed or against rather than saying are you open? Here's the kind of the science behind it. What is the word that the prospect on a cold call feels the safest saying to you? The word no, not yes. But see, if I say, would you be opposed to having a brief conversation on that? No, I'm not necessarily opposed. Like, what do you have in mind? It's hard for them to say, yes, I'm opposed. They want to say no. It's a safer word for them to say. Or, are you opposed? Or, are you against? Or, would it be a crazy idea to talk around? Or, would it be completely unrealistic to have a conversation about an offer? Okay? Those are just words where I'm getting them to say no, which leads them to eventually say the yes. Okay? I've been using that since I sold door-to-door in the early 2000s. No, getting them to say no, eventually leads to say, I did that in alarms too. I'd be like, I'd get to that, like, what happens if you don't do anything about this and like an intruder breaks in? Like when your family's here, are you going to let them do that? Now, this is after I've obviously built a gap. I wouldn't say that in the first 2 minutes they'd slap me in the face. But after I build a big trust and big gap, I can challenge them more. Are you going to let them keep doing, like, are you going to let that happen to the house like it did to the Jones family? Okay? Now, you're not going to say that in the beginning because they'll slap you around. But again, say, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Okay? Or if I'm like trying to raise funds for like a political candidate, I can do the same thing. Are you going to let that person take over the White House this year and force us to do blah, blah? No, I'm not going to let that happen. Which leads to a yes, I'm going to give you money for a fundraiser. Okay? It's the same type of concept. Okay, now let me show you one more example. I think you're going to like this. Let's say that you sold a recruiting software to recruit top truck drivers for truck companies, because a lot of times those companies will get in like flaky drivers, okay, from like Indeed or some type of like little ad, and a lot of times they might, get their license, start working for 2, 3, 4 weeks, then they don't like being out on the road, they're flaky, they jump from job to job, and then that cargo sits in the parking lot and that company loses tens of thousands of dollars a day because it's not being delivered on time. So let's say that you have some type of software that weeds out bad candidates, only gives you the good candidates, so you have solid people to drive your trucks. It's the same type of thing here, okay? Let's see here. I'm going to show you what to do. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, perfect. This is like this. Okay. Now, notice the pattern up. I'm holding a copy of one of your recent ads. See what I'm doing here? Yeah, is this Wanda? Yeah, what? Hey, it's James. James Miller. I'm holding a copy of one of your recent ads you guys have on Indeed about looking for like reliable drivers. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Now, right now, Wanda doesn't know if you're applying for the job. She doesn't know what's going on because I interrupted her pattern. I use the familiar term. Yeah, it's James. James Miller. And then I'm holding a copy of one of your recent ads on Indeed. Now, she knows about the recent ad, right? So that makes sense. I'm holding a copy about looking for reliable drivers. I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. So I could do this if I was a recruiting agency too, recruiting or staffing agency, same type of pen interrupt, okay? Then I've got to disarm them. Well, and I'm not even sure who I should be talking to. I'm trying to reach the person who's responsible for like overseeing any possible like hidden gaps in like your systems to recruit like really solid top drivers that might be causing you to hire several that maybe end up quitting sometimes. Who should I be talking to about that? See what I did? Disarming right here. Not even quite sure if you're the right person I should be talking to. Trying to reach the person who's responsible, and then possible hidden gaps. I'm still neutral here in your systems to recruit top drivers that might be, notice I'm still neutral, might be causing you to hire several that kind of end up quitting sometimes. Who should I be talking to about that? Like, I'm confused. That would be George over in Human Resources. Should I have you transfer to their voicemail to leave a message so they can call me back later to see if I'd be available? Okay? Or I can say like this. Okay, here's another one here. Let's say if I know them. Okay, I already know the person answer is the right person. Okay, or let's say that I already know who I'm looking for. I'm calling a bigger company. I'm looking for Todd Benson. Let's just say. Okay, yeah, it's James James Miller. I'm holding a copy of one of your recent ads on Indeed about you guys looking for like more reliable drivers, and I was wondering if you could possibly help me out for a moment. Sure, how can I help you? Well, I mean, is Todd Benson in? As I understand, he's the person responsible for maybe looking at any hidden issues around your recruiting process, about hiring top drivers that might be causing a few hires to kind of be flaky and quit. Is Todd Benson around where I can talk to him about that? Just a different angle, okay? Now, let me give you one more example, because let's say you get transferred to Todd Benson, okay? Here it is right here, I missed it. You guys use for new drivers that might be causing you to lose more like solid drivers that he could be hiring. Is he available? Okay, confused town. Now, let's say the gatekeeper transfers you over. You're calling a big company here, and they transfer you over to Todd Benson. Okay, here's how that conversation would look once the person that you're trying to reach actually answers their line. Okay, let me see if I can enlarge this for you guys real quick. Good Lord, no, maybe not. Let's see what I can do. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, this is Todd. Yeah, Todd, hey, it's James. James Miller with ABC Company. I'm holding a copy of one of your recent ads on Indeed about you guys looking for like more reliable drivers. And Debbie over in Dispatch, I just talked with her, and she mentioned to me that you might be the person responsible in your department for looking at maybe any, I don't know, possible gaps in your recruiting process. It could be forcing you guys to keep several trucks vacant each month because some drivers end up quitting, and then you might be the person to talk to about that possible issue. Should I be talking to you about that? Okay? See how I'm doing that. All right? All right. Hope that helps you today. That is the biggest reason why so many salespeople suck at cold calling. And then I showed you kind of a generic format of what's called an NEPQ problem statement. And I gave you about 3 or 4 different industry-specific examples. Now, if you want to learn more industry-specific examples for industry, in the comments, go down right now, hit the subscribe button first, because I'm going to go through more training on this in the next couple weeks, and then comment what your industry is, and maybe I will help you with some problem statements for your industry. So comment the biggest thing you need help in, and maybe on the next training video, I'll actually, because I read your comments, I will shoot some training content around that to help you close more deals. Hit the subscribe button. I'll see you on the next training video.